cashier. Get the money like a cashier. Customer, clientele. I was broke, that was last year. Getting money like a cashier. Get the money like a cashier. Benjamin, nothing less. I was broke, that was last year. Don't change them. I never switched up. Been down to day one. Stay social. People change them.
Right. Go ahead, Shane.
So, welcome everybody to another episode of Dope Black Thoughts. I am Hashim Coates, also known as Hashay.
I'm Mike Carter, aka the Paperboy, and we have some in-studio guests this afternoon or this evening. Go ahead and let them introduce themselves. I guess we can start from left to right.
This way?
I couldn't remember if you wanted to go on camera or not, but go ahead, man.
I'm happy to be on camera. I'm Josh Landy. I'm a lawyer here, and I represent this gentleman over here, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm Joel Northam. I am an activist with PSL, and I'm also one of the charged activists in this crazy case that we're probably going to talk about a little bit today.
Yeah, I'm Lillian House. Also, all of those things. I'm an organizer with the PSL, Party for Socialism and Liberation. Co-defendant here with Joel Northam. Glad to be here.
I am Amelia Power. I have the honor and privilege of being Lillian House's attorney in these cases, and I am, a local criminal defense attorney.
And I'm gonna go ahead and just do it from here, so I can have a conversation with you guys. Go ahead, and the easiest thing for us is just start from the beginning. Okay, what kind of brought you two together? And I know the name. I know about this, the charges, but what kind of brought you two together, and how did you even get involved with that?
With him? Or
Yeah,
just
why do you need a lawyer? Easiest. Easiest. I'm trying to be nice about it. Why do you need a lawyer?
Okay, so on September 17th of last year, SWAT team came to my house. I was arrested, put in jail for about 8 days. I was charged with a lot of things, including but not limited to first-degree kidnapping. And given the severity of what I was charged with, that was when I was like, hey, maybe I should start looking for lawyers, right? And so it actually took me a while to find Josh. I was, like I said, I was looking for lawyers, and, a lot of things, factors came to mind. I wanted to hear, what other people thought of other people, and who was, who was good, who had the sauce, and Josh's name came up, and I called him and I was like, hey, so this is going on.
And back up. Because remember, there's people who don't know what happened, and they don't know. The SWAT team didn't just break into your house. Right. What happened before that?
I can go back prior to September. All
I
right.
think that's.
But wait, man, he was just saying how good I was. You cut him off.
Right. So the group that I organized with, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, we had basically been hosting these huge protests in Aurora and Denver. But in Aurora specifically, they were pretty groundbreaking, just because Aurora does not have, that many huge protests with thousands of people that happen. And we organized these protests in response to, what happened with Elijah McClain back in 2019. For those who don't know, Elijah McClain was brutally beaten, tortured basically by 3 Aurora police officers. And he died 3 days later after his torture, right? And it was a huge, it was infuriating. There was a video that came out, there was body cam footage, there was all this stuff, and we all saw it, and it needed a community response. And and there was the call for justice for Elijah McClain was loud. And at the time that we were organizing this protest, this was also happening at the same time as the George Floyd uprising that took place last year in 2020. And so while that was going on, we're like, hey, we have a problem literally right in our backyard that's happening. And so we took it upon ourselves to organize protests in order to get justice for Elijah McClain in the form of firing the cops that actually murdered him and getting those cops charged with the murder of Elijah McClain. And so we had held protests June 27th, July 5th. I think we had another one. July 3rd.
The big one.
Yeah, that one. And I think we had July 20th, and I think we had called another one. I don't remember the exact dates, but it was a lot. We were organizing these protests. Lots of people were coming out. The protest that we had on June 27th had, I think, something like
that's the large. That's the one that that had 5,000 to 7,000 people. It was really hard to see, but see how many people there were. And talk to me about. So you got through the protest, but no, you didn't get taken into custody at that time, and so the largest one was the July. Was it the July one? Was the largest one, or did they get? I'm trying to think because we actually had some people out there, and I think I know two of our announcers or two of our announcers are out there at a certain point, but you didn't get taken into custody then. You didn't get arrested then. Talk to me about. At a certain point, you're like, okay, we're just going to go on to the next protest. And
well, let me jump in because the reality is they didn't do anything wrong, right? And so, I know, and not just the lawyer talking here. I mean, obviously, I am the lawyer here, but the reality is they didn't do anything wrong, and they didn't feel like they did anything wrong. So, Joel, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not like you thought you were going to and you had gotten away with something. It's
right.
Like this was life as normal. Political speech at its finest, one of the most important political speech of a generation, right? So sorry, go ahead. But
no, it was like that. It was like, oh yeah, we're protesting because that's what like. There's a history of that in this country. You know what I mean? So that's what we did. We were organizing protests. Mm-hmm. These were peaceful protests. We weren't, doing what we were accused of. Blah blah blah. It was. We were organizing these protests, and they were for everybody. They were bringing the community out. It was bringing out, the church folks and the workers and the neighbors and just. Really vast layers of people in Aurora, and yeah, we didn't know. Like we had no idea, and until we were actually charged for like all of these.
When you did you receive the warrant, or did you when you read the charging document?
Right.
Go through you reading the charging document and you seeing the charging document, and I also want to know how you got arrested, and I also would like to know how you were taken into custody. If it was the exact same act.
Yeah. So when I first read like the arrest affidavit and everything, I was shocked to know that they had been like from the moment we even had that first protest, like there was this. Here's pictures, here's information. It's like from that very first protest on, they had just collected all of this information about us from that very first protest, and I was like, oh, okay, this is like they really like. I don't know what exactly brought that on at that point, but it was pretty shocking for me to actually see that from that very first protest that they had been.
So they were monitoring you from that first protest,
right? And just building a case and just collecting stuff and just trying to see what they could charge.
So one of the interesting things, and I'll just jump in, right, because that's kind of what I'm here to do. But one of the interesting things was because they were doing things that were perfectly legal. They were making themselves so identifiable, and the really, so this Adams County case that got dismissed, which we'll go into the details of that, I'm sure, but they wear shirts, identify themselves as leaders of their group and their movement, and they specifically advise people who are at the protest to engage in lawful protest, to not commit crimes, and unfortunately for them, right, all of the good deeds they did were punished by the police. And so because they were so readily identifiable, the police said, okay, well, you're the criminals we're going after, even though they weren't criminals. And they were doing everything they could to make sure other people weren't criminals. It's really baffling, but sorry, I just wanted to jump in.
No.
When you say they were tracking them, that's part of
why. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I gotta say, we're not naive though either. Like, I guess at the same time, like we've been organizing around Elijah's case since August of 2019. When there weren't a lot of other people on the scene, when it wasn't thousands of other people, when it was really us going to city council with other community members, alongside Elijah's family. But I mean, APD's known us. In one sense, it's not a surprise to be targeted because this is a police department that's out of control, that is criminal, that is, used to getting away with what they do. And for the first time, this community stood up in a mass way. And it stood up and it stood up and it stood up. And we were there at the front of it, and they knew it. And so, in one sense, it's not a surprise. Of course, we operate knowing that that's a real factor, and that's why, everything that we do, we are fully aware of what we're doing, and, we're not hiding.
And I like that, like what Josh kind of put it, we weren't doing anything wrong. Why should we expect to, to knock the door? How did they come and contact you?
Man, that day was crazy. So actually, I was the second.
And let me use the right words. How did they come and arrest you? Wasn't a contact. How did they come and arrest you?
Yeah. So I was the second person arrested that day, with PSL, and there had been an arrest of another person, Russell Roosh, in our organization. He had much fewer charges. Felonies that were like ridiculous, but they're all dropped now. But Russ was picked up early in the morning at Home Depot in his work truck, very strange circumstances. And I get some texts about this. I'm like, this is so weird. Russ just had an infant baby. He hasn't been out at these protests. Could it be political though? And so then I'm getting in my car and I'm driving, and I just had to run an errand. And then all of a sudden I see a cop on the side of the road, and I'm like, could it be? And then I see another cop, and then another cop, and then another cop, and then they're all behind me with their lights on. And then they're at my window, like, get out of the car, searching me, take my phone, all that stuff.
And this is Aurora Police Department.
It's not, actually. It's Denver. And I'm in Aurora. They went to Aurora for me and took me to Denver, where I was held. So in any case, but then we're driving in this DPD car, and I drive past Joel's place. And what do I see? All these cop cars converging on Joel's apartment. And I'm like, here we go.
So I'm curious. Maybe someone can explain this to me. Well, first, before I say that, I so worry about you all being on the show right now. I'm glad your attorney's here. I just don't want anything else to happen, because those sorry sacks of dung are watching, and they are waiting for any type of slip up or anything to happen that they can twist into a slip up. Ask me how I know. But I'm curious, how is Denver able to cross jurisdictional lines to do the arrest? But then I have some more too. But I'm just when you said that made me have a question.
I actually had that exact same question, and I'm a lawyer, so I wanted to know.
Let's just say this. Our clients were arrested by Denver Police Department. Their warrant was out of Adams County. They were taken to the Denver County Jail, and they were held there for 8 days before they were able to see a judge.
They were kidnapped?
They were held with no bond holds. So that is what happened.
Huh.
During COVID.
It sounds like kidnapping to me, right? Like if someone that doesn't have jurisdiction crosses over into someone else's jurisdiction and snatches you up. I don't know. That's just me. I'm not the legal mind on this.
No,
nor do I act like one.
Yeah.
But I am concerned with, after the investigation happened, and it has been deemed that they murdered Elijah McClain. I'm going to use less words here because it was not a justifiable stop, and Elijah McClain is no longer with us, that it was murder. How are we still here for any of this right now?
Which means, why are they still charged?
Yes. Because if they were there in protest of the incident that happened with Elijah McClain, and the state is saying that at the time it was justifiable, but the investigation has shown that it was not justifiable, there was no probable cause for the stop, I'm like, everything should be dropped.
Well, those investigations really were only open because of the protests.
Right.
That's actually why we're here, is because this is retaliation for, activity that's really brought to light the full criminality of what happened in Elijah's case.
You mean to tell me George Brockler and the attorney Dave Young, not to be confused with the good guy who's the treasurer Dave Young, would actually carry out retaliatory actions?
Yes.
Imagine.
Yes. Absolutely.
Sworn officers of the court.
In Aurora.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
The way I look at it is just, it's an extension, you know what I mean? They covered up what happened to Elijah McClain. Well, first they murdered Elijah McClain, then they covered up what happened to Elijah McClain. And this, I mean, it's
But
not.
They made fun of what happened.
Yeah, then they made fun of what happened to Elijah McClain in pictures, mocking it, right? And then, you know, like, this is, it just follows a continuum. It's an extension of the same thing. I mean, it's not, yeah, like,
Well, and they know they're going to kill again, to be straight with you.
Right.
They know they'll kill again, and they don't want the community doing this again. They want to send a message that, no, you don't get to stand up. This is what's going to happen.
And they wanted to decapitate, like, the mass movement. You know, they wanted to basically silence people that were organizing these mass actions that were happening. And, you know, they would probably do it again if they got the opportunity, which is why it's so important for us to defeat what we're dealing with right now.
Question briefly, and I want to full disclosure. I've spoken to both of your lawyers, and I've known them for years. And when the topic first came up, of you guys having a conversation on Dope Black Thoughts, I was make sure you talk to your lawyer. Make sure you talk to your lawyers. This is real. The reality of it is, we have viewers, not as many, but we have a lot. People are going to see this. The names that you just mentioned are going to see this, and they are still in power. They're going to continue to be in power.
Yeah.
For both of you, do you feel any kind of fear of you've already been arrested once and charged with kidnapping? Do you think it can happen again?
Listen.
I mean,
I don't know. There's the I don't know. Like, I've been asked that question before, and I just have to say, it's like, yes, whereas I recognize it's a possibility, I'm not afraid of disrupting the powerful and corrupt. You know what I mean? I fear God. I don't fear you if you are flesh and bone. You understand? Like, and the truth is, like, they are corrupt, you know, and like the tides of history are going to prove that. And, you know, I sort of rest in that. At the same time, yeah, jail, this whole process has been very, very uncomfortable. I'm not going to pretend it hasn't been, but like, you know, like we prepare for this. You know what I mean? This is something that we mentally prepare for, you know, in doing this work. Like we just a cursory look at history, especially the history of, you know, of Black activists in this country fighting racism. We know what they're capable of. We know that they're, you know, I've said this before, they're like a rabid tiger that's backed into a corner. And, you know, like that's when they lash out the hardest, you know? And it's just like, me personally, I look at this as, you know, kind of inheriting a legacy, you know, and that's honestly what keeps me going in this fight.
Well, that's what I was going to say. How do you feel about that?
well, I think that also, you know, looking at what happened here, I mean, it's really a colossal effort that went into concocting this case. I mean, it was not just, you know, the police, it was also district attorneys. I'm sure there were officials who were, you know, had their hands in this. All these people who were not happy with the light that these protests were bringing onto Aurora and whatever their role was in the Elijah McClain case. And, you know, we don't have any illusions that we're, you know, bringing attention to people who have a lot of power, but like, this is about the dignity and the safety of our community, and it's shared by people all over the country. Like, we know what we're up against. We know they're going to lash out. And, you know, the question is, do we continue fighting, and do we try and, you know, mobilize the full strength of our side when we are struck out at? And that's what we've done. I mean, like, the fact that we are where we are now, that we've, you know, pushed forward so far in this case is thanks to, you know, the unity and the support that we've had from the movement, from people who are paying attention and, you know, speaking out about this. And we have to, you know, really fight this with courage so that people understand that in the future, like, if we're attacked, well, you know, we have strength too.
Well, no. Go ahead.
I just want to say, I think what's so important too, thank you, Lillian, sometimes I feel like people think these cases are getting dismissed or winning these charges because they, you know, everyone's just deciding, like, let's just all come out, like, they're factually guilty, but let's, you know, what I want, Josh and I can attest to this, the evidence supports dismissal of these charges.
And here's my next question, and it's for, you know, you and Josh. The reality of the extraordinary steps that have happened in this case, without giving up any type of attorney-client, how do you communicate to your client of, yes, we are in the right. Yes, this is the evidence and the law is on our side. That is not going to stop them from coming after you again. How do you communicate that to your client?
I'll let Amelia tackle this one first.
Well, I mean, just in general, I think when you're representing clients who are also protesters, like it just starts from a different position because, there is this sort of added level of, what is our ultimate goal here? It's just different than representing your standard criminal defense client. So, Lily and I have had a lot of talks that are, they are not so much like, well, this is how much time you're facing and this is what you're risking and this is the benefit of, the deal. We would ever consider a deal, but it's more like
good.
Yeah, it's more like what are we, how do we want to talk about this? How are we going to go about it? And so just in general, I think it's easy to talk to them about these cases because
They're not naive.
they're not naive. They are incredibly savvy and able to use a lot of, like media and social media. And so
yeah, I agree.
It's been really symbiotic, I think.
Yeah.
I was really happy to hear that that accepting a deal is not on the table. Never accept the deal when you have done nothing wrong. Ask me how I know. Fight it out. For anyone watching, right? I mean, this is for you all. You guys are already there, but this is reinforcement of your belief. Fight it out. Fight it out. Fight it out. Fight it out when you have done nothing wrong. I understand the pressure is there. You're fearful, like, oh my God, felony time? Whoa. Like it's and that's part of the tactic. And I really think that falls under cruel and unusual punishment on how district attorneys can load on charges to frighten people, make them live in a condition that is not their normal state of living to accept some type of charge. With that being said, do you all, the PSL members and everyone, do you all vote? And are you politically active in supporting measures? It was SB 217 that passed last year and the current criminal justice reform bill that's at the House right now?
Yeah, I'll take this. To answer your question, do we vote?
You better. You went through this.
We actually, the PSL, we actually run our own candidates for presidential election. And yes, we vote for them. Answer that question. As far as, answer, do we support local measures like SB 217 or this other one for HB 82 that just was recently being talked about in the House? Yeah, we think that supporting these immediate reforms are a good thing, are a positive thing. And yes, we do support them. At the same time, we recognize that one, they're limited insofar as, as soon as these things are passed, there's always people, there's always forces in power that are trying to immediately snatch them away just as soon as, these reforms are implemented or passed. And so, I think that everything can go further. That's what I think.
Yes, I agree with you. Okay. I definitely feel that qualified immunity should be removed from district attorneys. I'm hands down, I'm there.
Speak on that.
Whether it should be removed. I'm happy to. Sure. Yeah. Of course it should, right? I mean, look, here's what you have. You have individuals with some of the greatest power that we give people in this world, and it is unchecked. There are district attorneys who have been found to have lied and fabricated evidence that has put people in prison, that has murdered people, predominantly Black people, and they will see no consequences for it. So should qualified immunity be removed from district attorneys? 100%. They should be personally liable for the decisions they make. Now, you should have to prove something, right? You should have to be able to, make the determination that they committed a wrong, that they lied, that they fabricated, that they're responsible for this injustice. But if they are, 100%. Not only that, but there should be mandatory sentences for them going to prison. It shouldn't be left to a judge to determine, oh yeah, my buddy who I used to practice with, who did this thing, is really a good person. He doesn't really deserve to be in jail. No, judges have no discretion to sentence tons of people to probation that commit crimes that we would not consider violent or serious. They're forced to put them in prison. So if we're going to be charging district attorneys with crimes on that level, they should have to face the time they make other people face. That's my response.
Well, there's an election in about 3 years from now for JD18, so that sounds like a good campaign speech, in my opinion.
And I got a question specific on that. So, Brockler brought the charges. Is that correct?
And Young.
And Young. And Mason and Kellner dismissed some of the charges.
Mason has dismissed the entire
case, but Kellner, there's still pending charges out of the 18th under Mr. Kellner.
He dismissed all felonies and many misdemeanors.
Politically, do you think that was politically motivated?
Hell yeah.
Well, which part? That's a pretty complex question.
Because
I want to explain. Well, I already spoke, so
ahead.
I feel like I gotta explain that. Well,
because he just brought up in 4 years, the 18th is going to look a lot different than it does right now. It's going to look. It will not have Douglas. It will not have Elbert. It will not have Lincoln counties that are a shade, a predominant shade that does not match the rest of Arapahoe County. Kellner obviously is going to be running. Obviously, take it out. Probably will be running for the 18th as the DA. Wouldn't it make sense for him to politically, instead of fighting all these cases, to dismiss them?
Well, I'm not as.
I see your mind working. Go ahead, man.
I might not be as privy to the exact calculations that are going on as far as their chances for getting votes and, among different, sectors. But I think as far as, is it politically motivated? The way that I hear that is like, are they taking into consideration, how people are viewing this, how they're understanding this? And of course they are. I mean, there's been no issue bigger than the Elijah McClain case to people in Aurora because it's so outrageous. It's so insulting. It's so terrifying. I mean, these cops are still walking around on these streets with badges, with guns, right? And, here you have the previous administrations telling the community that they didn't have a right to stand up about it. And, they have to make a decision. Do they want to be associated with that? And, based on, there's no evidence to these charges. Do they want to carry it all the way through and, have that associated with them? That's what I mean by, is it politically motivated? That the people are decisive, that, they don't have a choice here, but to take into consideration the reality of how the community understands this and what it means to us.
Yeah, and it's just like, I hear all the time, city officials and, how do we rebuild, rapport with the community and this, even, Chief Wilson, will be like, how do we want to rebuild trust with the community? But just like you mentioned, the cops who murdered Elijah McClain, and you get crickets, and it's, there's this thing, they like to pretend that things are not political when they really are. A lot of politics is gaslighting. It's just pretending that we actually didn't see with our own eyes what we saw with our own eyes. And I think. Yeah, as far as like what Lillian was saying, I think is correct. It's just like, yes, they are taking into consideration what the mood of the people is, what what might be a good plug to establish rapport or whatever, and whatnot. There's theories, but I don't know.
Well, and I really just want to make sure that I'm not saying that it's based on the whims of the people. They know that there's no evidence here, and I think there's the reality that they can choose to carry, like you're saying, they can choose to force you through the full legal process. They can force you through trial. And, they have a decision whether they're going to do that. And, that they can do whatever they want, even though they know that there's no foundation to these cases. So that's really what I mean.
Well, briefly, and I know Josh and Amelia know this, that those numbers on the end of those sentencing ranges are real.
Mm-hmm.
So still going out there knowing, you guys telling me those numbers are real. I know we have the law, we have justice, we have the people. Those numbers are real. But we're still going to protest. We're still going out there. Talk to me about that, man. It's just real.
We recognize that it's real. It's severe. It's serious. I do not want to go to prison. Like nobody does, right? I think But at the same time, it's like, I also don't want, the dignity of our people to be called into question by these powerful forces and by the police. Like, it's like, I don't know. It's just, are we about what we say we're about? You know what I mean? Are we about really that justice for Elijah McClain, or are we not? Are we about like making sure that the rights of people to protest injustice in our community is protected, or are we not? And we are. And I think that it's very, very important to maintain that position. We're not going to let this situation break us and break what we have set out to do since August of 2019. And, I think, that's pretty much what it's about.
Either we're going to have a democracy or we're not.
Right, and the abuse of power just underscores, and this is why we keep talking about it. It's why we're not silent about this, because it just underscores the need, like, for a movement to continue. Because we just saw the start of real power being built in Aurora, right? And like, it needs to just be the beginning. And this shows how badly people here deserve something different. And the other part of it too is that people can have illusions about the power that we're up against, and we need to be smart. There are people who are not smart in these protests, and we also, as organizers who are in it for the long haul, like, we can't be naive about it either. And that doesn't mean we're not showing up with courage, and we'll continue to fight. We haven't stopped fighting this whole time. But when you're in a real struggle and there's an enemy to it, like, you got to know them just as well as you know yourself. And
they study us.
They
study us.
Well,
Yeah,
they were monitoring you guys 2-3 months before they even decided to have the Denver police jump out on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what Lillian was saying. Just like every action that they've taken to just like try and repress us, to try and put us down, to try and put the movement down, to try and sweep what happened to Elijah McClain under the rug. It does underscore the reason, again, why we need to be out there. So it's just like this contradiction. It's like this sort of self-propelling situation, you know what I mean? That they keep on, like, they could have easily stopped all this from happening if they would have just fired the cops who we saw murder Elijah McClain and charged them for murdering Elijah McClain. Like, but instead they had to, like, I don't know how much money and resources and surveillance and technology and like overtime they had to pay people to do, to track, like, oh my goodness, they ran a red light, like, just all of this stuff, when they could have just fired and charged the cops who we saw, who the entire community in Aurora saw murder Elijah McClain. So it's just, it's a self-propelling thing. And honestly,
to use less words, if they just would have followed the law,
the law would hold, but the reality is it's mostly targeted. It's very class-based, which in this country is racialized, but we won't get into that.
So I have a question. A comment was made about you all go to protests and you're smart about it. It was that smart about it that caught my ear. Explain what being smart at a protest is.
Well, we're not under any illusions that, like, the justice system in this country or the Constitution is really a document that is, about enshrining, like, the interests of all of us. But it does have some really key stuff in it that we have to be aware of, because it does define, what we can do and defend as our legal rights. And so, and that's not to say there aren't, it's like civil disobedience sometimes presses up against that, right? But just like, you also have to be aware that, like, the cops do have a tremendous amount of power to do what they did here. And so, we just aren't reckless, and we especially can't be reckless, because you're saying we're out there in these red shirts, people know who we are. Like, we're not trying to throw shade on anyone, but it's just, the reality is, when you talk about all these prison sentences on the line, like, we just would want to communicate, like, yeah, we're not cavalier about that, but also we're not, scared off.
It's like, it's being smart it's just having an analysis of, like, what, like, the balance of forces are in any situation, what the concrete conditions are in any situation. And then, like, that sets the parameters, you know what I mean? Like, that sets the parameters. And, like, yeah, there's a reason why we don't, like, mask up and and remain anonymous at these protests, and why we wear red shirts and why we're identifiable. Like, we want to draw out as many people as possible to our protests, as many people in the community as possible. It's easier to do that when it's like, hey, here's my face, here's my name, here's our organizational affiliation, here's what we stand for, here are the demands of this protest, right? Like, so yeah, I mean.
Because
so let's talk about the big elephant in some of the conservative rooms.
Oh.
Are you all about destruction of public property?
So I'll jump in here. I think that's a great question. I understand why you're asking. I can tell you that our clients are not about the destruction of any property. That would be a crime. And our clients do not advocate for committing any crimes whatsoever at all, period. Bar none. That's it. Done.
I mean, because it wouldn't be smart. Yeah, because they have their faces exposed if that's what they were about.
Yeah. Well, so let me chime in on that point though, right? Because part of it is, right, they're smart, but being smart can have this sort of negative connotation of, hey, I'm smart about it, I'm getting away with it. That's not what they mean when they say they're smart. What they mean when they say they're being smart is they've read the law, they understand their rights, and they engage in a protest in a way that is lawful. And their hope is other people will see that, identify them as those people that can organize and rally in a lawful way and do it at the same time, in the same way, to affect that change that they want to happen. And so they're never advocating to commit any crimes. I'm just going to jump in and I'll answer that.
I appreciate the clarity on that. Because we've heard that, right? Like, these are the groups that are going out here doing this. And it's like, oh, people that are not covering their face are going out here doing this. Like, it just doesn't make sense for me. And it's the same argument that I had with people in 2014 when the name Black Lives Matter came on the scene, and they were labeled as a terrorist organization that was out doing the destruction. And I'm like, my God, if anyone can read and comprehend, do a little bit of studying of American history, even the lies that they tell us, and see a damn pattern here. It's easily there. So I thank you for providing clarity on that. Hopefully that puts that issue to rest for people who are getting ready to run with that lying ass narrative of that's what they're about.
Well, and I didn't mean to sort of kind of I didn't mean to jump in, but here's what I will say too. Just as another way to illustrate how the way in which they protest is smart. And, you know, Carter and I know, and Amelia and I know, and now you guys know, that it is the lucky people who have the privilege of being protected by the Constitution. And I say lucky, meaning you have to be lucky to find yourself in court, right, for having done nothing wrong. Let me finish. And be in front of a judge who's willing to apply the Constitution and say no to the district attorney and say no to the police and tell them to their face, the people he's going to see every day, the cops that are going to come into his courtroom and try to protect him if something happens, the district attorneys that are going to bring cases to him and say, you guys did wrong, and I'm throwing this charge out. And that's what I mean, right? They're smart because what they did was engage in a peaceful protest that was protected by the Constitution. They were lucky because they were in front of a judge who applied the Constitution to protect them.
Well, my question, the next step is, the judge did the right thing. The district attorney did the right thing. Who, and you don't have to give me names, but who, for lack of a better word, the haters that you didn't see that came to attack you? Not the police, but was there any other organizations and or individuals who weren't happy and were attacking you? You personally, you guys are your face. And they're attacking you two personally, attacking the movement personally.
I mean, I think to talk about anyone besides, the police and the officials who protected them to their shame in Elijah's case would be to distract from the reality here. I mean, and I do also just kind of want to circle back on that point. I don't like letting that point slide without saying that, there's a lot of focus on scrutinizing the resistance of oppressed communities and talking about, force and violence and destruction when the force and violence against them, that initiated this is so much greater. The violence of the Aurora police and the violence that they perpetrate against, so many members of our community who are locked away, their whole lives taken, is so much greater than any of the marginal little things that happen during protest movements. The reality is that there were thousands of people out there from this community who are fed up, who are really motivated, and they know that when they go out there, they're showing up, and who's going to be on the police lines in front of them are killers, are brutalizers. And that is bravery. And most people they want to be in the streets, and they want to not put their lives on the line. They want to engage in lawful action, and we respect and we unite with that. And that's really like the core of what drives us, is how we unite with the people who likewise need to see change and are ready to fight for it. And that's really what we mean by SMART, is like, what's gonna get us change. So
yeah, and also too, just like, we don't want to have to be out here protesting because of this. You know what I mean? Like, and so when they look at, isolated whatever, and this is like, it's like, we don't want to have to be out here protesting this because of violence that y'all committed. You know what I mean? Violence that these people caused, and the violence of police terrorism. And we could even talk about just like the violence that like poor and working people all across Aurora and Denver and really all over this country face from sunup to sundown. Like poverty is violence. All right. This medical system that we have right now is violence, right? Like being like getting paid a living wage is violence. You know what I mean? And so I think that like it's hypocritical to me whenever like these conservative voices want to just attack these, or to pinpoint these little isolated things all the time. And, like sort of back to what you were saying about how, in 2014, when they called Black Lives Matter a terrorist organization, you know what I mean? Like they will call any movement, any group, any organization that challenges the status quo that benefits these people terrorism, right? But exactly. But at one time, you know what I mean, as you look at the history of this country, the same people that are leveling terrorism claims against people, they were considered terrorists at one point by the British. So it's just like, I don't take that term seriously when these people level it against movements and organizations and groups, because honestly, it pales in comparison to the terrorism that poor and working people, especially people of color, face every single day.
Exactly. And while we're talking about SMART and judges, I got to tie this in because I do politics. I do campaign management and organizing. For our viewers, do you all know that you are able to vote on the retention of judges? I need you all to be aware of that. It's all the way down at the bottom of the ballot or maybe on the second page of a ballot. But I need people to understand that you can vote whether or not a judge maintains their job. Highly important to organize around. Highly important.
I don't want to call it an end game. You're very powerful speaker. So let's not call it an end game. Let's call it what's next. This is a great platform to announce you're running for something.
Tear it down from the inside.
Hey, I'm just throwing it out there. No. Really, you have a passion. Obviously, I've been here. I've known you 30 minutes. I know you got a passion. But what's the next step? I know it's those officers need to be gone. So tomorrow they're gone. What do you do?
Yeah, that would be nice tomorrow. Yeah, it's not going to be tomorrow. I wish I could say that I have thought further ahead than getting these cops, charged. I guess I kind of. I don't know. It's like where is there a situation in Aurora and Denver where it's people that are powerless and that are being oppressed by powerful interests? That's where I want to be. That's where PSL should be. Like that's where we want to be. That's what's going to happen. I don't really have any personal ambitions of running for any political office or anything like that. But
so I was gonna go ahead, but I want to know if we have any information on Eric Brandt, and if you guys know anything about that. Okay, then I want to ask. Go ahead.
I was going to say really quick, just back to your question about sort of how do you talk. I'm so impressed by how selfless they are. Right? Like it's never been about them. It's never been I mean, of course, you don't want to go to prison, but it's always about the cause and the movement. And I love working with them.
That is cool, and thank you all. Thank you all for doing that. We all have a part to play, but I feel that the next thing should be Aurora City Council races. They could use some energy behind, because there's some conservative folks on there that have raised I hate to use this as a measurement, a ton of money already, that believe that you all should be locked up, that believe that the police are right, and they are working to claim power on the city Aurora City Council seats to allow this type of stuff to continue. So that's just my own. I'm not in a race. I'm not working on a candidate, but that's just my own personal bias of like, this energy needs that. Like, Aurora needs help. The left side of Aurora needs help. So that's it. I'm done.
We're watching that.
Yeah, we're definitely keeping an eye on it for sure.
For you guys, I know for Amelia and Josh, I know you found each other serendipity. But is that I know you guys as criminal defense attorneys. Was this this kind of protest area? Is that part of your practice, or was it really serendipity? Did it just happen?
Yeah, I've handled a bunch of these cases in the past, but the way Joel came to me was he approached me needing help, and I was obviously aware of everything, and he's the right kind of guy to help, right? You know, on some level.
Just take it. Just take it.
Right.
But here's what I'll tell you. You know, he's a cool guy. He's a humble guy. He's smart, right? And like you say, he's a powerful speaker, but he's also a powerful personality, powerful person. And it was easy to find myself aligning with his interests and his cause. And as you know, as criminal defense attorneys, we don't always find ourselves so lucky. And that's okay. That's part of our job. I'm all right with that. But I really love when I can find someone that I can connect with. And I thought we have. I think we have. I think we have a good relationship. Yeah, I know. You see me. No, I think we can talk like regular people. I can tell him. You were asking earlier, how do I communicate with him as a lawyer? But just like this, right? We have conversations like this where I say, this is what you're looking at. This is what they're trying to do to you. This is what I've seen happen. It could go horribly wrong. And he's the kind of guy who says, let's fight. I'm prepared to deal with those consequences. And that's pretty amazing. You know, that's pretty amazing, man. I mean, you come on.
I don't think we've asked. What is your background? I don't.
Background.
Well, I really want to know.
You want me to answer what your background is?
If you could tell her
both of us, right?
what her background was, you tell me what is your background?
It's like one of those,
Honestly, I don't know. You all of a sudden you popped up. Come on.
Like, how'd we get here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just living in this world, and I don't know. I mean,
But not
You feel free to tell them to stay out your business too.
Go ahead.
I mean, just like so many people, you know, you have a lot of, you want to see change. Like, you see a lot of things happen that are just unacceptable on a daily basis to, you know, your community, to people you care about. And I think, you know, it's different for both of us, but that definitely planted a seed on how to fight and, you know, looking for what to do about that. We both came to organizing and found, you know, in the PSL, a fighting organization that really meant it, that really was about changing those things and empowering and uniting with, you know, the people who are affected and really building power. And once you're in it, it's like, I mean, what else am I going to give my energy to? There's nothing better. So I think we're you know, both feet in.
Yeah. I mean, there's a number of qualifying events, I guess, that you could say got me here where I am right now in 2021. I guess one of those qualifying events was the execution of Troy Davis in 2011. That whole case, that was like the first real thing that was like, well, I shouldn't, I mean, I guess you could say my entire life there were things, right, that whatever, but like being able to like, you know, like a one event that was just like, okay, you know, like this is this is 400 years of this mess, right? Like I've about had it. It was the Troy Davis situation in 2011. That was also like a really turbulent year for a lot of people my age. I mean, like, you know, it's fresh out of college. There was an economic downturn. There was like not really much going on, racism, you know, and seeing that situation. And then like just seeing just like the inequality of this particular society economically, you know, the whole 99%, 1%, that was the same year. That whole Occupy stuff, that was the same year that Troy Davis was murdered. A couple years later, fast forward, or actually 1 year later, fast forward, you have Trayvon Martin, you know, and it's just like successive things that you keep seeing. And, you know, it just got to a point where it's like, you know, I can't get used to this. You know what I mean? Like, this is not something anybody should ever just get used to and accept. You know, like it's not, I don't want to be, you know, and it's hard, like being sensitive to a lot of these things, you know what I mean? And feeling and all this stuff, but it's not something, but we shouldn't be desensitized to this stuff. You know what I mean? Because, you know, especially when we realize, like, I think one of the things for me is just recognizing that we do really have power when we move collectively, when we move as a unit. And even if we, like, our people don't recognize it, like, the people that are oppressing us certainly do recognize it. Even if we don't, they do. And, you know, they move when we move. You know, every single, you know, positive thing, you know, like reform in this country that we've had, everything from the 8-hour workday, everything from civil rights legislation, everything, it's not something that they just give to us out of the kindness of their hearts. It's something that we fight for, that we struggle for, everything.
2 questions. Well, move as a team, never move alone.
Right.
2 questions, though.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say, not will you win, but
When you win?
That's right.
Do you think you're going to win? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question I get a lot. Even just like in our organizing, when we talk to, you know, regular working people, it's like, you know, like, do you actually think that it's possible to win? I don't look at it like that. Okay. As whether, like, can we win or can we not win? I don't look at it like that. That's not the binary that I'm framing it. I look at it as we absolutely must win. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's whether we can or cannot. Like, that's not. I don't even address that question. I look at it as, this is me. It's like, you know, birds fly, fish swim. You know what I mean? Like, we, you know, fight for justice. Like that's what it is. It's like, you know, I look at it as we have to win. We must win. You know, like this is our dignity on the line. This is our people. This is our planet. You know what I mean? Like, and it's something that we have to fight for, even against just insurmountable odds, it seems. You know what I mean? And there have been many points in history where we have won things. You know, we have won a lot before. You know what I mean? And things always come full circle. And I want to be a part of that circle, you know? And I think it's important for us to just keep in mind that, like, I mean, if we don't, like, radically change the entire structure of this society in the United States, like, it's just a really dismal picture. You know what I mean? We're looking at just like a really dismal picture of just like racism, inequality, all of these things.
It's kind of like with Josh and Amelia, we're talking about when you win. But understanding those structures are fighting against you. But collectively, I mean, I get chills when I think about there being protests on the lawn in Aurora, because I've been here for about 17 years, and I would have never said that would ever happen. But I also know, like I said, there's structures out there.
Can I
go?
I just wanted to, because I think that ties back into the question you also asked about, like, how I got involved, because I think you probably know, like, you know, my family's from Aurora. My husband grew up in Aurora. We have a lot of friends in Aurora. We live very close to Aurora. To see that march on June 27th and see, you know, just this radical change that you never thought you would see in Aurora. It's like, I mean, it's just in awe. And, like, to think about, you know, do I want to do this work? I have to do this work because this is why we become criminal defense attorneys, right? Like, You
You
know,
did.
That's the thing. Everybody always says, "Oh, it's impossible," until it's actually done, and then it's like, "Oh, this was actually inevitable."
No, it wasn't.
Nah.
Well, and it was because we were organizing when nobody was showing up. You know, when nobody was showing up, and it was that there were people who cared. You know, the circumstances arose, and we had to seize it, and that's what happened, and that's really what it's all about. And there will be more, you know, opportunities, and you know, we got to be organized.
Yeah. So, being born in Colorado, grew up in Denver, living in Aurora now, I was grateful that it came to Aurora. I've always critiqued organizations, Black Lives Matter, NAACP, whoever, for always organizing things in Denver when things don't actually take place or the issues haven't taken place in Denver. So I'm grateful. I appreciate the breath of fresh air of the organizing going on here. And I had to check myself sometime on it because I'm like, damn it, I came the wrong way home. I'm stuck in this traffic. And I was like, machine, if you don't shut the hell up, I'm like, traffic ain't water hoses that your grandparents' generation had to go through. Traffic ain't the dogs that your grandparents' generation had to go through. Traffic is not, you having the fear of that you can't tell a white person that, hey, you stepped on my foot, and having them show out in front of your home at night waiting to lynch you for having the audacity to say such a thing, right? So I humbled myself real quickly while I waited in traffic, and I was appreciative of the fact that it was going on, and it needs to happen more. It just needs to happen more.
Just real quick, I was trying to, this is awkward, but I just want to say, well, there's a way we always end the shows, and let me know, because we've already been here an hour, which is awesome. Like, engaged, awesome, man, it feels good. What I had a question for is, one, I am thoroughly impressed with you two, and I love these two. All right. Being a criminal defense attorney, and I know I share, with Mr. Ivy, just being a criminal defense attorney, and pushing that rock up that hill, Sisyphus style, knowing. But then when you see these two out there helping,
gotta give a shout out to Adam Frank too.
Oh, and Adam Frank, another member of the PD tribe, if you will. Pushing that rock up the hill, but then finding these two, and then finding you two, and like I said, I am thoroughly impressed with both of you. I hope none of my questions caught you off guard, and I have fallen in love again. Josh he was a intern when I first popped up in Jefferson County.
That's right.
You be back in Arapahoe. Thoroughly impressed. What we usually end with.
Hold on, before you do that, I want to give a shout out to them. I've followed a little bit. I've looked a little bit at these criminal defense attorneys, and of having one that has not given the same positive energy and has not given the same time to their clients, I definitely recommend you go and seek them out. I'm pushing them business because they can't advertise or advertise.
No. We need
Seek them out. Hold on. If you have a 17th Avenue attorney as your criminal defense attorney, inbox me because it might be the one you shouldn't have. So I'm telling you, you have a right as a client to drop them and to go pick up a better or a different criminal defense attorney. And that's it. That's just me.
Briefly, Ms. Powell, go ahead and give a shout out to your firm for the listeners, and you can give a shout out to your firm for the listeners so we know.
Yeah, my firm is called Power Law. You can find me at www.apowerlaw.com. And I'm excited because I'm expanding my business.
Do you have a Facebook page?
Yep.
We'll put that in there. We'll put that in the chat, sir.
You can get me at my firm. It's Ridley, McGreevy, and Winokur. It's a mouthful. Just Google me. My name's Josh Landy, and that'll get you to me. I appreciate you guys letting us make a shout out here.
Yeah.
And you guys go ahead and shout out how we get a hold of your organization.
Well, we also got a shout out Eliza Lucero, Terrence Roberts, our co-organizers, also put on trial with us, charged with dozens of crimes as well. But yeah, if you follow the PSL, we're at Denver PSL. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. Follow us, come out to the protest, get involved.
We'll put that in the chat. What I was going to get to is, I know some of you watched the show. We try to have all of our guests. The name of the show is Dope Black Thoughts. I need a dope black thought from each one of you. Hopefully you did your homework.
Am I capable of that?
Dope black thoughts do not have a color issue. Dope black thoughts are universal. I know Josh has got one over there.
I don't want to be the first to get a dope black thought. I'll tell you that.
I have a dope woman thought. How about that?
Do you know what? Yes.
Okay. Because I have been thinking.
Yes.
Okay, no. I just want to say, since I started my firm about a year ago, like, I've said yes to things that I probably shouldn't have said yes to. And this case was a big case for a solo brand new law firm. And I'm so glad that I said yes. And there's been a few other things this year that I've said yes to that, again, it's like, why am I doing this? But it really has just been such, I'm going to use like the 40-year-old woman word. It's been such a blessing. But no, really just, I think when you're thinking, can I do this? How do I do this? Say yes, and you're going to have amazing partners that come along with you.
I want to say, free Palestine and the occupation, and come out to the Capitol tomorrow at 4 p.m. There's going to be a demonstration. End all USA to Israel.
Free Palestine, yes. All of that Lillian just said. Also, free Mumia Abu Jamal. We are having a letter writing event on May 23rd at 1 p.m. Sunday at Mestizo Curtis Park. You should come out to that. Show support to our political prisoners that are still locked up for making the ultimate sacrifice, and they need our support.
Here's what I will say. Don't be afraid to fight injustice, and don't be afraid to fight for what you think is right, even if other people are telling you it's wrong. And that's a big part of my job. That's a big part of what these guys do all the time. We do it in different ways. It's a big part of what Amelia did. And because of that, we were able to help each other, help these wonderful people over here.
All right. Cue the music.
Thank you.
A-D-D-I-C-T-E-D. What is love? It's a drug. Let it rotate, just to get back in it. Calling me an Uber just to get back in it. Hit the cash out like pay, I send it. Is it really worth the wait? I don't get it. If I didn't grab